Okay, Disha, in the length of a tweet or a tweet thread, what did we talk about today?
CX and AI, pitfalls and the amazing future ahead.
I'm Amy Syed.
I'm Sean Collins.
And this is Numbers and Narratives. Thanks so much for coming on, Disha. Before we get started, do you mind reintroducing yourself for us really quick?
Yes, of course. Well, thanks for having me, Sean and Nabi. It's exciting to be here chatting with you both today. So I have almost a couple of decades of experience in customer-facing roles. I've ran, large global support teams, customer experience teams in large enterprises like GE, SAP, but also at startups and sort of mid-sized companies. My last two roles have been in customer experience software companies running customer success, or sort of whole customer life cycle from onboarding, implementation, renewal, retention, and through that I've also got a lot of experience talking to leaders of who run customer support teams, who own customer experience at large and small and medium-sized organizations. So yeah, I guess that's what we're here to talk about. And now with AI really coming in and disrupting, I would say, this space, there's just a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. I think so. There's a couple interesting things here. We have a lot of retention, customer experience people on from both the B2C side and a little bit of the B2B side. What's hilarious is you kind of encompass a lot of these personas. You've got the fact that you've worked for a company that does customer experience. You have customer success, i.e. like retention and growth experience as well as a couple other bits. So I'm super stoked for this conversation. I kind of want to set the stage by starting off in defining kind of what AI is in this space. Like, can you give us kind of a brief overview and a lay of the land as to, what is, how have you used AI? How are these platforms that you've worked for incorporating AI? What does it actually kind of mean? What are the customers looking for? What problems are they trying to solve? What does kind of the AI landscape look like today? And what are people kind of investing more into?
Yeah, totally. So just this is an interesting time we're talking about this because I had been really curious about this as well, right? Like, I think with generative AI coming in really strong, there's just so many players out there now. So I was interested in collecting data real time. In the last couple of months, I've spoken to probably about, I want to say 50 CX leaders in all types of businesses, like big, large, retail, B2B, B2C. And here are sort of some of my readings. So first of all, bearing maybe a very few players, which is very high margin, high touch, everyone, is eager to either themselves jump into like using AI to perform their CX service or improve their customer experience, or they have a mandate from the leadership. Like, they may not know what they can do, but they're like, oh, my CEO is telling me, we need to use AI for customer experience. So I would say at this point of all industries, customer service is seeing the most immediate and tangible value from AI. We always had the traditional, since several years, we've had the traditional chatbots and the ML models, right? They've been there for years, but it came with a set of challenges in terms of like how the maintenance of it, and then, the implementation of it, right? You had to create those workflows. You have to like think of every, use case out there. So it was harder for every company to implement without large investments. Generative AI is changing the game now. So the large language models are good at a lot of tasks in customer service, especially reading your like already existing data and knowledge base and providing quick answers for repetitive type of questions. That's the phase one. That's almost everyone today should have that or are working towards having that, right? So that's I want to say where it is with generative AI. It's very easy to point it to your database, and it also it has the model, right? And it gives you the quick answers, which really doesn't require um, the empathy piece or the complex piece that humans bring. I mean, for example, if I want to reset a password as a customer, or I want to know for a B2C company where my order is, like I really expect at this point zero response time. Like I don't care about how are you, what are you doing, we're here to help you. I would rather just have you tell me the answer. And that is what like today AI is really good at. Um, I think where the next phase is, and maybe where there is some sort of, I want to say, discouragement that is coming for these CX leaders in my conversation, is the software vendors are promising them a lot. They're promising them 50% resolution rates, 50% reduction in their cost structures. And all of that I don't think we are there yet, because what AI has not been able to solve today is really the long haul type of use cases. It's not, we're not there yet, but I will tell you, it is coming. It is coming really fast. So, I would, if I have to talk to a CX leader, I would tell them like, hey, you start, at phase one, right? Understanding on how you what are your repetitive questions? What do you want AI to do without compromising customer experience? And then the scale is going to come, because today AI is also expensive, right? So you're still paying for each, resolution. If you're paying for a tool, you have to pay for whatever large language model you're using for all of that. But technology is going to keep getting cheaper. I think there's that a law which kind of says that, hey, in the short term, we always overestimate the effect of technology, but in the short run, we underestimate it. I think that's kind of the state of AI in the CX world today.
I like that. And I like that line a lot, that we overestimate in the long run and underestimate it in the short. When you talk about, starting with phase one of really looking at those repetitive tasks, what is the easiest way and like kind of least intrusive way for a team to figure out the tasks and the questions that are eating up so much of their time, right? Like, I think one thing that I have found is everyone underestimates how long it will take them to actually do any one thing. And I think they overestimate how often they do any one thing. So is it like some sort of time tracking tool or some sort of counter that you can do to see where you're wasting time or where you're doing repetitive stuff? Or like, other than just like a query into, like plugging in every chat transcript into an LLM, like how can you figure out where you need to automate first?
Again, I think it is based on your business, but I think I would say, like in my conversation, what I've found is this the CX leaders start more with, hey, I'm going to reduce X percentage point of my cost, or I'm going to reduce X percentage staff. I don't know that that's the right way to start right now. The way to start right now is what is the job that I want AI to do? And what is the job AI is good at doing? So I think understanding your business, like if you start with this core understanding and you ask yourself, how do I make my solution faster, cheaper, and more efficient, right? What is AI going to be good at helping that? And what my humans are going to be good at, right? They're going to be better at certain use cases. They may be slower, more expensive, but you need humans for that. So I think putting together those use cases of where I think AI can help, make it more smarter and efficient, and where I still need to rely on the humans is kind of that first step. Um, so I mean, for a retail B2C, it's a lot of like, where's my order? How do I process a return? Kind of that's step one. Step two is, how do I integrate with the systems and create that workflow? So now, where's my order? Can I call the API of my shipping company and provide that tracking right there? Now, the third stage there is kind of that action. And which is where I think we still need a little bit more work. I heard, one of these podcasts where like this text to action is a big thing that's, today, we're working on in the LLM world. And that's kind of what is going to help now, that if my shipping company is still showing that my package is on the way, but it's been 2 weeks. So of course it's lost, right? What is the action that I'm supposed to take? Right now, at this point, you would have to create a workflow to hand it over to a human so they can make a call to the shipping company and do something. But in the future, I know, that's coming as well, right? Where there will be a use case where AI is able to do that, right? Make a call or talk to the system and locate the parcel and get you more. But yeah, I think as you think of like where do you start first? I'd start thinking of use cases, easier use cases, and then more workflow algorithmic use cases, and then of course you'll get to just more complex ones in time that scale come.
That makes a ton of sense. I'm curious from your perspective. There are a ton of, one thing that we've kind of talked about in the last couple of minutes that I find interesting is like there's a ton of use cases. They're very specific kind of to the industry. And you mentioned this towards the beginning of when we started chatting, but a lot of this is the immediate benefits are clear, right? The reason that this has been sort of taken by storm is that there's this big chunk of use cases that AI can just kind of tick off people's plates. It means that people have to spend less on these teams. What are some other benefits? What are some other improvements that you've kind of seen in the CX space from being able to implement this AI technology? But also, like, where do you think it doesn't come to play? Because you and I had a conversation before this on sort of the harms and benefits. Like, what are some of the other sort of like benefits that you've seen? And then we jump into the harms in a sec.
Yeah, yeah. So I think in terms of benefits, of course, there is the use cases we talked about on how you can bring efficiency by answering questions that are easy, that are kind of there in your knowledge base. That does not require a lot of complexity and several steps. Number two is, really using your data in the right way. This was something that wasn't easy to do, to understand your user preferences, your customer preferences. AI has made that easy, right? So you kind of, we know today that companies, especially today in the B2C world, right, they're doing some fantastic things to learn about their customer preferences through whether it's past buying history, social media posts, likes, and all of that they do. And now they can recommend them product and services to improve their engagement, get those repeat sales, etc. Right? And then there was also some limitation.
Just a little blip. My company is part of one of those companies. we do that. So yes, 100%.
Yeah, totally. And then there was just some limitation there on how you could contextualize and customize that content to your buyer, right? Now, generative AI is changing the game there as well, right? It's like, I mean, I'll just give you an example. Like if I bought a pair of pants online, in the past, I would just get suggestions on, okay, what top would go with it, and like with options of how I can pair it, and some stylist telling me here's what I can do. But now if I can add the context on there, like here's my specific body type, or I'm only 5'1", right? Generative AI now has the ability to look at other people like me and provide like more customized recommendations. So I think that's kind of just from a marketing standpoint, there's a lot that is happening.
So kind of what you're saying there, just so I understand, is kind of taking more data from that you get from your customers, right? Like things that they might write in a support channel, things that they might give us context around other areas of your business, not just during the buying experience, and using that to say, all right, we know that this customer likes pants. We also know, or likes pants and whatever. And we also know that they live in Michigan. And we know that, they like things that are generally more slim fit than classic fit because they wrote asking about something like that in a support call. Let's put them in a bucket of people that are very, very similar that we know about, and cross reference. Hey, if somebody else who lives in a cold climate and prefers slim fit things also buys this specific type of hoodie, let's sell the thing because we know that they have similar interests. Like, let's sell what the other person bought to each other. Is that kind of what you're
Exactly.
putting
Yeah.
down?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
nice.
then I know that's where the combination of generative AI and then the data science models, which companies like yourselves, I'm assuming, are doing, is solving for these more complex problems, right? Where you can become more industry specific, more domain, more personalized, these, what you call as the last mile or the long haul problems. Because I guess data science can study more of those complex problems in that more controlled environment. It's just I'm very excited. I'm optimistic about the future of where this can take us, right? Like, I just feel there's so many possibilities of use cases that we can't even imagine today, right? Like, I know when Steve Jobs said that every household will have a personal computer. um, people couldn't believe it because those are the days of supercomputer. It was so expensive to own that, and people couldn't think of it beyond a fast calculator. But look what it can do today. It's completely revolutionized, like how we work, buy, educate ourselves, do business, etc. So I know that we're kind of there at the cusp of this here in the next few years of what LLM and data model and all of that kind of coming together can do.
We had a guy named Paul Meinshausen on, probably like 15 episodes ago at this point. But he's a brilliant data scientist. And one thing he said has stuck with me, and like I haven't been able to get out of my head for 5 months now. He said, too many companies rely on data being like provided to them and like very explicit event-based data. And he said, what you really need to get to is realizing that you can create your own data and use that to fuel your model. And that's exactly what I kind of took away from that, right? Like using chat transcripts, using review transcripts, using browsing data, all of that to build a more complete customer interest profile and affinity profile, and then being able to leverage that through your recommendation engine, through automations, right? If you now have a profile of all these traits, like you were describing, Ibby, that fictional person in Michigan, when you launch a new product, they should that group of people should explicitly get a separate message being like, we know you liked this, and so we think you'll like this, right? And so it's not just the recommendation in like the you might also like kind of 3-item carousel at the bottom. It is redefining the way you think about go to market and product launches. It's sort of like even I'm always blown away when I see Shopify brands that don't have a back in stock notification feature on. Like that's a default, or not default, but that is a simple and no more cost feature from Klaviyo. I assume you're on Klaviyo. And so it's crazy to me you wouldn't use that. But now you can take that and say, hey, they subscribed and learn more about when this product's back in stock. Here's the 20 products that are like that, and start to build a super complete profile. I love that so much.
I think what you're also saying, and I think this is something I've heard with what's happening today in AI, it's also now closing the gap between small companies and big companies to be able to do such things. You do no longer really need expensive tools or have to buy a Klaviyo. There's a lot of this technology that's just going to be available to everyone. So hopefully that's going to open up, create more competition and just open up the world to a lot more players.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're back in like, I mean, obviously it's a completely different space, but 20 years ago, 15 years ago, how much you kind of just needed one super scrappy, hardworking, smart person who's just like kind of quote unquote figure the internet out. And now it's like, yeah, maybe I don't need hey, here's the 5 years of experience I expect you to have. You should know all these tools. It's like, I want you to be smart, curious, and willing to piece things together and figure it out. And that is like the SMB job description right there.
Shot. The one thing that it kind of reminds me of is like, imagine if you could like, I mean, look, Disha, you've worked at a ton of different like CX platforms. One thing that I find interesting, and Sean, you work with Braze. One thing that I'm kind of thinking of here is like there's so many touch points where you could basically pass data about a customer to a model and say, hey, your job right now is to create like the perfect tagline for this email. Where you've got an email, so like going back to the Michigan person, right? You're creating, either they log in and they like open up a chat window, and the chat window has context on who's like writing in, like for a customer service platform, or you're Sean and you're working for this, you're the head of marketing for this jeans company, your jeans company, and you're trying to write the perfect tagline that slim fit jeans are back in stock. And it's like, hey, like you for each individual customer, now you have this model, now you have this data, craft the perfect intro line to say, hey, welcome back, person from Michigan, or hey, these pants that you really love are like back in stock. You can kind of like start to personalize every single touch point, and make that sort of brand experience so much more cohesive because you have so much information about a customer that you can pass to some sort of model, is all I was going to say. But
it's like a multi-arm bandit plus AI text generation model that's going to like figure out the exact tone, keywords, structure for each user, so that like it's not like right now every ESP that I can think of and that I've touched in the last 6 months or a year has some sort of like AI powered subject line generator or text generator. Like that's become table stakes now, because every brand had to sprint to get AI features so they could say, look, we now have AI, even though they were already doing some sort of AI beforehand. So now it's like subject line and text recommendations. But this would be like not even just, hey, write a prompt, get a subject line. This would be personalized subject lines for each person to each person's preferences at scale, which is pretty sick to think about.
Yeah, like providing a personal stylist to all of your customers. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, that is a great example. Disha, along that same train though, there are some things that AI maybe should do, and I'm curious if you have any. You don't have to name names. Any stories, any case studies, anything around, hey, like it can actually have pretty large consequences, and like what are some of those consequences? What do some of those consequences look like?
Yeah, and actually, I'll talk about a couple of public stories which everyone should know about, so I can name names, because AI does come with its pitfalls, right? It can frequently hallucinate. There are definitely governance and privacy concerns. There's recency and contextualization issues today. And so the data can become stale that it's learning from. So there's like all of these factors. The big story that had gone viral was about Air Canada, right? Like I think, I'm assuming you both read it, but for those who didn't, like I think the Air Canada chatbot told a person that, oh, you can't get a refund for your flight because it was like a bereavement type of a reason. And they it just made it up, like nowhere on their website that was there. That's like that's the hallucination, right? And generative AI can do that. If they can't find a response, it's going to make it up.
So can a disgruntled employee to say, hey, you can't just, it's not an AI problem. This is just a hiring problem.
Yeah, and I think where Air Canada actually busted it up is they fought that, and they said, no, sorry, our AI was wrong, and they should have just given it, but they're like, no, we are not liable for our AI, which really didn't help their brand. Another thing, which was also came across, and one of my former customers who were trying to sell our AI solution to it brought that up was, and this was only, I want to say, a month or so ago, where Patagonia, like one of their customers, actually sued them for, um, reading her buying history and then making it public, or talking about, hey, because you bought X, now we'll do, we can sell you this. So they were sued that I wasn't told that you're like reading my data and you're going to use it to market. So I think, again, that's where governance and data privacy comes in. And because it had become sort of a court case, now there are brands who are like, you know, we don't want to get into this unless we have all our check boxes from like our privacy and governance check box. So it's certainly slowing things down on that side, and definitely I think requires some more work.
Interesting. This is super. I actually didn't know about the Patagonia one, but um, it that's really really interesting. Apparently, it might not be legal in the state of California to do this because, that's super interesting. That makes a ton of sense. Um, wild, 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 wild. Very cool, very cool. Um, yeah, that's a great example. The other one that I like to kick around on the marketing side is there's a grocery store chain in New Zealand. Um, I'm pretty sure I've brought this one up on the podcast before, but it's like my favorite example of this. It's kind of horrifying, but the thing that they did is they had a recommendation engine. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, they had a recommendation engine that looked at a customer's buying history. And then after they had made a purchase, so like it would take the receipt and it would send them an email with the receipt, and it would say, here's a recipe based on what you just bought. And one of the ones that went viral was a customer had bought like fertilizer and flour and sugar. And so it sent them a recipe for poison cookies. Um, and it was like, hey, like, cook your fertilizer and like boil it down into poison. And then you've got flour and eggs and sugar. So make some, make some cookies and put some fertilizer in there for poison cookies. And like, it was just like, what? So yeah, definitely.
I mean, algorithmic stuff has always had holes, right? Like there's the old one. I can't remember when this happened, right? But Target, some point in time, like 10 years ago, maybe, used its recommendation engine and realized that a woman was pregnant before she did because of the other things she was buying, and so they recommended like pregnancy tests or something. And like she was like young, so it became like a whole thing. I mean, like Meta, what they have a toggle to prevent using like protected fields if you're in like housing and credit and lending and stuff like that. But a lawsuit a few years ago found that even though it wasn't explicitly being told to optimize for protected fields, it was still finding correlative things, and so it was taking those into account. And it's like that to me is always going to be the scariest part about anything that's like black box. It goes into an AI and just kind of happens, and there's no governance, there's no monitoring, there's no way to kind of see what factors it's taking into account. It becomes pretty hard to unravel or even say like this wasn't correctly done, our mistake, because you can't tell why it spit out what it spit out. So I think that is pretty scary.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think the way I know Meta and the providers are augmenting this is having large data privacy teams who are reviewing content and saying this is taboo, etc. And so I think that is going to, just coming back to CX space, as I talk to some of these companies and the leaders, that's the recommendation. Like the way you get around some of these hallucinations and AI kind of making stuff for you is you have targeted roles whose only job is to make your AI successful and powerful. So I think content creators, or AI knowledge base administrators, those are roles that are coming up, and it's they're really their sole job is to make sure that the data that your AI is learning from is the correct one. Obviously you also get so much insight as you start using this. So look at those insights, and whenever there's a mistake made, like how are you going to correct that? And you will need humans at this stage to have that continuous improvement happen. So yeah, I think from a stage perspective, that's where we are. And then it's only going to keep getting better. There's no reason to be afraid to jump into this.
Yeah, I think that's a big point there. I think it is undeniable that AI is going to continue to become more commonplace and more powerful and just a factor in our lives. And so at some point, you're either going to be miles and miles behind because you were scared to start poking around and trying things out, and then you're going to always suck compared to your peers, or you can start to try and like see what you can do and learn and just like make it part of the way you work. And I think that's going to be critical.
Yeah, adapt or die.
I have like a little kind of coding test that I give some people in an interview process for one of the roles I've hired for. And someone asked me if they could use ChatGPT, and I was like, "Well, would you use ChatGPT at work?" And they like thought that I was like calling them out, and you could see them be like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, yeah, then use it now. Like, why wouldn't you? Like, I'm not testing you to see if you memorized everything. If you can use ChatGPT to get the output, what do I care if you made it up or if ChatGPT did?"
Disha, in the interest of time, as I predicted, like the list of questions that I had, we got to like 1.5 of them. But I have one last one that really like kind of underlines your expertise. I'm curious about two things. One is, what do you see as the future of sort of like the human touch? Because we talked about this before in the podcast, but like you're like a big proponent of, sometimes a human needs to be in the loop. Like there are some experiences that like an AI really won't be able to do. What do you think is the breakdown between kind of like the human side of customer experience and the what an AI is going to be able to do in like 5 to 10 years in the future? And then lastly, for companies that are starting to explore putting this as part of their tech stack, what advice do you give them on like where to start?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if we're looking at the future, right, and I don't know if it's 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, but I do believe the human jobs will materially change, right? Humans will still be good at what we are good at today, right? Like we have deep understanding of, the context of, our product or our company. And, we're good at multitasking and solving complex use cases. Um, but if you're in this kind of space, whether it's CX or any job, I think, and this is something Eric Schmidt told in his Stanford interview to actually programmers, right? I think it was talking to a computer science class, that it's important to think about what you're doing at today, how you describe your job, and if AI can take, like, just imagine the possibility if AI is there and can take away your job, what all can it take away? So I think I would say in the CX world that's important, right? Like AI is going to become better, faster, more cheaper. And so you need to now think about in that context, like you're not going to win with AI, but from a human perspective, how can you be more creative? How you can assist AI? So I think like the type of jobs that will be there in CX will materially change. Actually, I also looked at a service now, like vision demo or something, and they were showing that like in a couple of years from now, you won't need any support agents. They will just be uh, they will not be talking to customers, but they'll be monitoring and taking care of bots that are serving customers. Like that's showing this big dashboard. And yeah, well, I think everybody's sort of like dreaming of this, but yeah, as long as you keep in touch with what's happening and how you're evolving yourself, I think that's kind of going to change. Um, I think in terms of also, so your job is then to give smart instructions, right, to your AI, to your company. Today, I would say in sales and marketing, the whole role of, how do you give good prompt? I think prompt engineering is a thing, right? To generative AI is a thing. So like, how are you going to get better at that is important. Um, I think the advice I would give CX leaders who are just beginning to explore AI is, first of all, the time is now. Kind of like, as I said earlier, to be more dramatic, like it's literally you adapt or die. Um, and then number two, focus on the problems you want to solve. Start with the ones that need speed and efficiency, that's simple, sort of your level one type of issues. And then go to the next level where you can create more workflows. And then think about how you can augment human work with AI. So even if AI can't do all the complex decision making for you, where can it take you? So now your humans have a lot more information than if they had just started on their own. They had, right? So how you're going to measure, your main KPIs is all going to change, right? Because humans are not now going to do more complex work. So your mean time to resolve is going to like actually increase, but it's important kind of you look at that in that context. Um, I will say, lastly, there is a lot of smokes and mirrors out there. There are a lot of vendors, new players coming, kind of promising a lot that's probably not even possible. So the current stage is confusing, but I would say there's no reason to fear to at least get started, right? So start with your phase one, phase two, and you will figure out on the way, as technology evolves, of sort of staying ahead of the curve there.
I think that's awesome. Those are two very good, like, I social snippets right there. Disha, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciated, getting to chat with you. And yeah, before we jump off, any sort of last things that you want to pub? Where can our listeners kind of find you? Where can they hear more about? Anything that you want to sort of give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, I am on LinkedIn. You can look for me at Disha Gosalia. And yeah, other than that, I'll be out there. I'll be, seeing most people like in CX and SaaS conferences. But yeah, thank you for both of you for having me here. I think it was a engaging and good conversation. I'm always eager to learn more from others. So yeah, I'll keep an eye on what else you guys have coming up there.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great chatting with you.